let's talk about finishing. Here's this little piece that I was working on, and if you were with me Friday, I finished, I think, around a corner, but I left this corner undone, and I'm going to kind of re-give that part of the lesson again, just because it's worth repeating, right? So I stopped about 2 inches from the edge, and I just did a couple of stitches just so it holds it nice and tight in place. This is when I then take this corner and I cut that corner off. And you'll have to watch the older videos on how to zigzag and get this all prepped. But I'm going to cut off right on the line. I'm going to ignore my zigzagging because I got a little crooked on this corner. And this is the first row. This is what you would do. And these are big, giant stitches. And often what will happen if you're not fussing with it is you'll end up with this great big giant gap. But if you fuss with it a little bit, you will get it to a point where it will close. And just do some stitches across here very loosely. I'm not doing it tight. And then I want the tips of the threads to stay in place. So I'm just going to take a bite through that there and then come over here and pin that in place. And I don't worry about these loose threads kind of hanging out there. Okay, so that gives me that nice flat little corner. And I'll go down this side and finish that up. Then you would continue all the way around. I'm just getting back to where I left off here for the second time. Now the second time around, you start folding these down. And I stitch it a little bit different. Instead of a running stitch, I don't know what this stitch is called, but I'm basically going from here in the middle. Well, I usually do it this way. I usually push down there. I come up in the middle of the bundle and then go down next to the loops. And what that does is it seems to hold it in place better than what a stitch like this would be. I'm going to try something for just a second. I can't adjust that right now. Okay. So when I get to this corner, I'm going to fold this corner down. And I want just the tips of that thread to touch the corner. The biggest mistake most people make is they overfold that corner that first time around. And I am just tacking this on the sides just so it stays folded. Makes it a little bit easier. And then I'm going to take my fingernail and kind of crease it right in there so it folds nice. And just bend that over and stitch that down. I'm going to do one more so it stays put. Okay. And then on this side, again, I'm going to crease that a little bit and fold it down so that I end up with a nice little miter. And sometimes just I'll catch a thread here and a thread over there. And sometimes that's all you need to hold it down. You don't want to over tighten that, because if you over tighten it, you end up with a corner that's like this, and then that never lays down quite flat. Okay, so you want to be very loose and relaxed with that and not over tighten those corners. That's probably the second most mistake I see. And then as you can see, it goes fairly fast, you know, when you're doing the straight edges. But that is how you would base that first and second row. So what I want to cover, and I covered that on Friday, but what I didn't cover is the corner trick. So let's talk about the corner trick. And I've got a perfect corner right here. The corner trick is when you want to avoid that one hole that's right there where your whipping going this way and your whipping going this way intersect. You do not want to whip that entire corner out of that one poor little hole. So let me show you what I mean. I always start the thread by going away from home and then I come back home. And it doesn't matter where your thread ends up. I like to go down from the front, so I'm going to go down from the front. I tend to use this little crochet finger method, and what it does is it keeps this part of the thread and that part of the thread from meeting, and if they don't meet, they never tangle. So it works out really good. I use a single strain or a single strand of yarn for the same reason. I think a double strand of yarn tangles more. And whipping is actually quite relaxing when you're not fussing with the yarn tangling. And I'm doing this without actually looking at the backing, because for me to look at it, it would have to be here. And then you can't see it, right? So I'm going in by feel. I'm snugging up close to the loops. I think I need to do one more. Once I get up to the corner, I take the yarn and I move it this way, and then I come down in that hole. I've only put 2 strands of yarn in that hole, and that is all there will ever be in that one little hole. Okay? Here's the trick. Because when you whip and whip and whip and whip and whip and whip and whip, not only does your corner get huge and thick, it still doesn't stay in place, right? It still falls off of that corner. So I use a sharp needle. I use one that is skinny rather than fat. It has a long, tall hole rather than a shorter one. Okay, like this needle. I don't know what kind of needle this is, but this is way too thick. This is the one I was using on the other one. It's okay if that's all you've got, but look at the difference between the two in the thickness. Okay, this one here is definitely much thicker and bulkier than what this one is. It's still pretty narrow at the top. It doesn't go way out like a tapestry needle does. So for that reason, I do not like tapestry needles. My favorite is a doll needle, D-O-L-L, and this is one from a set of them. And it's sharp at the tip because you'll need, if you like using that blunt gold needle, you'll have to just slip your needle off of your yarn, put a needle like this on, do your corner, and then you can go back to your gold needle. Just doesn't work on the corners. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to imagine a line right across this corner. And I am going to whip several stitches across that corner, laying them up one right next to the other. Now this can get a little bit tricky in that it's hard to kind of push that needle through. So sometimes you just get it through however you get it through. That's why a skinnier, thinner needle is much better. It always seems to take, I always say 3 to 5. It always takes me 5. So maybe I should start saying 5 to 7 because you might need a little bit more. So there's 3. I'm going to come over here a little bit. Lay that one down. Okay, so I think I've got enough on, no, I want another one right there. This one's going to take 6. Okay. Now what I have to do is work up one side of the corner. And I'm going to go from here and just work my way up an imaginary miter through the center of that corner. So this one's going to be next to that one that set up the corner, but shorter. It's not going to go all the way to the base of the loops. The next one's going to go next to that, and it's going to be even shorter. And that one finishes the corner because now it's meshing up with those little short ones that I did. So now I'm going to take the yarn over this way, and this is where I start checking the back and make sure that I'm doing okay on the back. So from this way, I want to do nice little short ones because I'm going to be on the second side, I'm working my way down. And I do it both ways. I'll finish this side first, then do that one, or I'll finish the other side first. Just kind of depends that when I'm doing the small little bites at the top, where is my thread ending? And then I just work on that side that's closest. And now I'm going to do one that's almost to the bottom, not quite. And because I got to get my yarn back over to the other side, I'm going to put one in that hole. So I guess there are 3 strands going through that hole. Then from here, I just start whipping again. And I'll just continue until I run out of this. When I put more yarn in, I'll be about to here. I will not pick up here. Instead, I will go straight to this corner and I'll get this corner started, and then I'll work my way around until I run out. And I'll do all 4 corners at once before I do the stuff on the side. And it just makes things a whole lot easier. And you're going to make life difficult for me, aren't you? Excuse me, I got to let the dogs out. Oh, why every day at this time? Okay, so let me go up and look at what your questions are. Remember, if you're asking a question, make sure you put that Q in front of it so when I scan down, I can find your questions. So Pat is asking me, are you using a dowel needle today? Yes. The little skinny one is a dowel needle. This big old fat one is something else. I don't know what they were called. I got them in a packet of 4 to 6 of them. It's okay. I don't like them for corners. But for the straightaway, I don't mind it so much that I'm going to get rid of them. But they would not be the first thing I grab on. I'll probably keep one in my toolkit. Here is another dowel needle. Now I can show you the differences. Let me switch that camera back. Window. I can't zoom in on that right now. But here's the difference between them, where they're just as skinny. They're not as fat as that one is. But this one's a little bit longer. And then I don't remember if the next one's longer or if the next one's skinnier. But I really like this size. That's probably my next favorite. Although that does, it is the, is it thicker? No, they're about the same. They're pretty much about the same diameter. But they also have a long eye, so they're relatively easy to thread up with the yarn, which makes it really handy from that point of view. Kathy is asking, she goes, trying to do an hydrangea, looked at Jean Shepherd Proddy book, but did not cover it. Yeah, doing a hydrangea Proddy, you're not going to get any detail. Oops, let me put that back up there. The picture on the finished project shows standard Proddy. I don't know what standard Prati, I'm assuming you mean just a square strip. Kathy, I really don't understand the question. I'm not sure what you're asking me on that. So ask again, put a question mark in front of it. Give me some more details to work with. I'm scanning, looking for question marks. So if you ask a question, make sure you put a question mark in front of it. Erlene is saying, would you need cording if you rolled it to the back to stitch? If you rolled it to the back, I don't think it sits as flat on the floor. It tends to do this kind of a thing. So I like the fold forward because it lays flatter. Whichever way you do it, it doesn't really matter. What's important is what kind of backing do you use. I'm using rug warp. Rug warp is thicker than linen. In linen, I need to put cording in, and cording would be like the size here of like a charge cord. It's not the 1/4 inch cording that is bigger. Let me show you a little bit more detail because I didn't talk about this before. Where's my finished examples? Okay, so this kind of cording, this is like a 1/4 inch, could be 5/16, comes from Walmart, no big deal. You can use that, but not in this method because it's too thick. Okay, so I just got to find the sample that I'm looking for. So you can use this thick cording in what I call the best back finish. It's the best only because it's very high archival quality. So if you have a burlap rug, this would be the finish I would use because the burlap's not going to rot as fast because it's not folded tight. When you fold fabric tight like this, that's a knife fold edge, that's where it's going to rot. Doesn't matter if it's on the floor or if it's on the wall. It's time. And unless you've got a way to stop time, there's nothing that's going to stop that from rotting. So this particular one doesn't have any hard folds because you take a piece of cording, you fold over it, right? But then you've got the backing, and so now you got to have rug tape. And the rug tape should be pre-washed, or I even boil it to get out any excess dye and to shrink it. Because if you don't, you're going to be sorry later if anything gets wet or whatever. We never plan on that, but do you want to take that chance? So you've got to prepare that, and then because it's been wet and washed, when it dries, it's wrinkly. So now you got to iron it. Then you got to put that on. Then you have to sew down the raw edge. Then you have to sew down this edge. That's too much. That's not the finish I'm going to do. So when you do, let's use this piece of backing as an example, and very exaggerated size-wise. So when I do that first fold, and then I basted right here, I don't need anything at that point. This is where it's going to rot. Okay, and that's 3/4 of an inch away from my loops. I can kind of live with that. Then, if you're doing something skinny, or if you're doing it on linen, you need a skinny piece of cording. And I had a piece in here. It was with the fringe sample. I'm not finding it. Okay, so my charge cord is going to work, right? Okay, so you guys know how thick these are, right? This goes in there, and then I fold over that, and then I do that stitching that goes this way. That's where I put the cording in for a linen rug. And you need that in order to support it so that it doesn't turn into a knife fold edge right there, right? With rug warp, it's got 2 layers of rug warp, and that's pretty thick compared to 2 layers of linen. So when you fold it the second time, what supports that outside fold are those 2 layers that are on the inside. Okay, so my dogs are just going crazy because there's lots of traffic all of a sudden. Okay, so that's where I would use linen. Okay, so I'm scanning for questions. So if you've asked a question and you didn't put a question mark in it, I probably won't see it. So you need to ask another question. Rennie is saying, posted in the second chat message. I'm not sure what that means. Rennie, you're going to have to ask me more than that. Debbie is saying, if you whip with wool strips, do you have a preference for needles? I don't. I have no experience. Well, I can't say I don't have any experience. I did finish a small piece that way. I don't prefer it because it felt like I spent all my time dealing with the ends. You can only whip, maybe this much, and you've got to end it and start another one. That's why I like yarn. I just rather would sit there and pull that yarn through. I don't care how many times. And it works out just fine. Okay, so Rennie is saying at the top, the second comment at the top is from Deb Klein, and she's just saying hi. So Rennie, you're going to have to ask again or copy it if you can see it. I can't see it. I answered that. And then Kathy is asking, the pattern showed 1/2 inch taper pulled through, which filled the flower, but it's not authentic. What is your recommendation for hooking or prodding an hydrangea? So I'm guessing you're talking about 1/2 inch taper, which is a proddy. Proddy is only good for things without detail. And I think an hydrangea's got a fair amount of detail. Oh, shoot. I don't have that rug handy, but let me see if I loaded it as a picture. I didn't. I have a pattern that I hooked, or one of my designs called Rose with Monarch, and it's got hydrangeas in it. And what I do is every little petal is a slightly different shade of blue. And it makes that kind of thing going on. Just depends on how your pattern's drawing. How big is the hydrangea? There's so many variables, Kathy, that's hard to answer that kind of a question. Rennie is saying, I lost your directions on how to do a secret message on the back. That one is, I'm scratching. Come in, take your nap. Where's your sister? She didn't come in. Lovely. I'll have to do that at least one more time for the other dog. The secret message on the back is actually a technique that I first saw done by Bev Conway, and it's on the back of on the rug. You have to take, how can I say this? When you look at the back of the rug, you can clearly read the message because you're reading just the back part. And a lot of times, if it's on a dark piece like this, it'll be hooked in white. So what you need to do is put the lettering on the front of the rug. Okay? So in order to do that, you're going to have to print it flipped, which can be done with almost any printer. You'll just have to research how to do it on your particular printer. So you print it flipped, and then you transfer it to the front of your rug, and then you hook it. Before you hook anything else, you hook it with a small cut, and you hook it lower. Then you hook the rest of your rug in a wider cut, higher, to the higher height, and you can't see anything on the front. And what you can see on the back is the secret message. So I think that's what she's talking about, and that is how you go about doing that. Do I always use wool to bind? Yes, and I always pretty much use the same wool yarn. My favorite is Cascade 220. They no longer make my favorite color, which has me a little perturbed. So I usually hand dye it. This just happens to be a little bit of my favorite color that's no longer being made. And it stopped being made many, many years ago. So the odds of you finding it are slim. Come on. But I like the weight of Cascade 220. The best thing to do to find your yarn, don't go to Michael's, don't go to Hobby Lobby. Find a knit shop in the area. They will carry Cascade 220. Almost every knit shop I've ever been in carries Cascade 220. Some carry the full line, some carry just a few colors. They can often custom order a color for you if you want. It can be dyed, but I like the thickness. I like the twist of it. It holds up extremely well. And yeah, when I'm whipping, I might have to go into the same hole twice a couple of times. I don't care. It's calm, it's easy, it's thin enough to do a pretty corner. When you whip with chunky yarn, you end up with ugly corners. There's no other way, just because there's too much yarn there. There's nothing you can do about it. Just take your time with it. It's not a race, and just be patient with yourself. It's going to take a while to whip a rug. It always does. But you can pull it up like I did with this little guy, and while you're sitting watching TV, whip an inch or two. Tomorrow, whip an inch or two. Guess what you have done by the end of the week? You got this much done, right? That's a lot. And it doesn't take you that long each time. So just bear with it, and it'll work. Sue is saying, this has been awesome, but do you have any tips for finishing something that is round? Yes, I did that. When was that? We did that relatively recently. I did a full, long Friday lesson on doing round rugs. It's all in the prep work. It's before you cut it off. It's important that you make sure it's square. And those directions are in the replays. They're clearly labeled inside the Rug Cooking Journey. I'm sorry if you're not a member, but it's easy to join. And I use the proceeds that I get from the members of the Rug Cooking Journey to be able to deliver this message to you. Otherwise, I could not afford to do it because it costs too much. But because of that, I keep the replays exclusively for those members who are supporting my efforts. So you would have to go into the Rug Cooking Journey and look for that. It's relatively recently. I'm pretty sure it was 2012. I don't think, or 2020. I don't think it was last year. What was the size? What size was the piece of wood you used to measure off the backing for cutting the excess? It's not wood, it's cardboard. And they're free with any order. Or you can send me a self-addressed stamped envelope and I'll mail it back to you. It's 1.25 inches. It says so right on there. 1.25 inches. That's the magic. Works perfect for rug warp. If you're doing linen, I would make sure you do a test on that. Make sure there's enough there for it to wrap around that cording. Some people like to bump it up to 1.5 inches for linen. But test it and see what works for you. How do you hang a rug on the wall? I have only done it with the dowel, but wonder if there's a different way. I do not recommend a dowel. I know a lot of people do, just because I just envision the entire weight of your rug being held from a little teeny tiny piece, and some of the backings will pull apart. The threads will actually separate if it's a really, really heavy rug. I tend to hang them on the wall like this one. And I have a YouTube video for that. So you're on my channel now. So when we're done, just search the channel and look for how to hang a rug. It's a YouTube video, so it's one of those nasty little skinny ones, but it'll give you the gist of what's going on, and that's the best way to do it. Is that a pincushion on your table? It is. It's one of my favorite little possessions. And I did not make it. I bought it like this, but it's an antique clamp. And then it's got just this little part that sticks up. And then this cute little pillow made out of paisley. And yeah, and it clamp. It's here because I've been doing some sewing right here. But it's usually on the other side of the room by my cutter. I love that little thing. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Now I'm wondering, do you wash your wool yarn before using? No. And here's why. It's always important to know, why do we wash wool? We wash wool to felt it up, to shrink it, to make it fluffier. If you'd wash your yarn, you won't be able to use it. So do not wash your wool. You can use it just the way you've got it. You do have to be a little bit careful about getting it. Okay, so you're at the Goodwill and you see a big old $5 bag, and you look through it and it's all wool, so you're going to buy it. That's fine and dandy, but it's not going to go next to your wool collection, right? The way you can't really put yarn in the washer, because if you do, it's unusable. So what you do is you use the method that the Henry Ford Museum in Michigan uses, and that's you put that fiber in the freezer, and then you thaw it, and then you freeze it, and then you thaw it, and you freeze it, and you thaw it. I usually go through at least 3 cycles. And how long do you leave it in the freezer? I leave it in the freezer until I remember that it's there. Could be a week, could be a couple of months, it could be a few days. Make sure it's nice and frozen, and then get it out. But what's important is the freeze-thaw cycle. If there are any wool moth eggs, which you cannot see, it will kill them. They will not hatch. If not, you're running that risk. And I don't know about you, but it's not worth running that risk. Okay, so what other questions do you have? I'm going to have to go grab the question folder. And Liz, do I always use cording? I never use cording, but I'm using rugwarp. If you're using linen, you will have to use cording. And, this is Monday. This video will be on YouTube, and you can watch the replay and get caught up. On the Fridays, I do not leave the videos on YouTube because those are exclusively inside the Rug Cooking Journey membership. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. I'm gonna go get some questions. If I can find my folder. Oh no! What did I do with the folder? Oh, isn't it trouble? You hate it when you organize things and then you can't find. It's not there. Okay. I'm just going to hang out for a little tiny bit. If you guys don't ask any questions, I'll just end it here. But I don't see the question folder. Okay. Okay, good question, Debbie. She says, do we need a password for the hook-in? Technically, yes. But do you need to know it? No, because you're going to get an email that has a link in it, and that link has the password built in. Okay, so grab that. What I recommend is that you set up a recurring reminder so that every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 4 o'clock, and then put that on your calendar, and then as part of that entry, copy that URL, that web address, and paste it into each day's, because it's going to stay the same each time. paste it into each day's calendar entry, right? So, and then turn on alarms. Turn on alarm an hour before so you can wrap up what you're doing. Turn on an alarm for 15 minutes before so you can get ready, right? And then that way your alarm will go off. You'll know that all you have to do is go to your calendar, click on the link, and there you go. Diana says, she says, you took it out last week. I can't click that. There you go. You took it out last week to find a question. I did. But where is it? My desk is cleared off. So I don't know where I put it. But I'm going to wrap it up there then, since there don't seem to be any other questions. Thank you so much for attending. If you wondered what I was talking about the rug hooking journey, or any of my online courses, go to howtorughook.com. There's information there right on that homepage where you can join. The rug hooking journey is a paid membership. You can join monthly for a 6-week term or for a full year. And I give you nice price breaks the longer you join. What you can do, if you're unsure, join for 1 month. You can cancel right away. You've got the rest of the month to enjoy it. And then if you're partway through it and you're ready to upgrade and grab the savings, I recommend even on day 2, change it to a yearly, because what it'll do is it'll take what you've already paid and give you credit for it. So that's the way to do that. Other courses there, the virtual die class and the practical color planning course, are open and available for enrollment right now. So you can join that. Normally they're closed down, but I know people need things during this time, so it is open for that. And then be sure to join me tomorrow for the hook-in. Go to my homepage at cindygayrughooking.com or back to howtorughook.com and look into the information on joining the hook-in. I'll be back here next week. I'll be right back here on Wednesday for another lesson, which will live on YouTube, so you'll be able to watch that as a replay if you miss it. And then on Friday, I have my usual Friday lesson. That will not live on YouTube. You can watch it live for free, but then the recording is going to be moved into the rug hooking journey. So that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for attending. And I look forward to seeing you all at the hook-in. If you come to the hook-in and it's your first time, make sure you tell us. We like to welcome you. Bye for now.